Hello there and welcome to this video. I'm very happy that you chose my video. Out of everything out there, it makes me feel very good about my poor decision-making skills. So Splatterpunk, what is it? The term was coined by David J. Scow in 1986. You may know as a screenplay writer for movies such as Leatherface, The Chainsaw Massacre 3, and Critters 4, The Streets. Splatterpunk, with the splatter regarding to the intense gore and violence often depicted in the genre, and punk as the movement aims to break down boundaries of horror and explore more taboos, as well as having a more counterculture alignment. Splatterpunk is often named controversial in the horror scene, with the genre often rubbing people the wrong way and being described as going too far. However, especially in recent years, this genre has risen to a place of solace and intrigue for many people, myself included. Splatterpunk has inspired works such as The Coffin of Ande and Lele and Aaron Beauregard's Playground, of which the latter we will be covering today. Those works have made it into the mainstream, although received dense criticism to the content displayed in them. Today we are going to discuss some Splatterpunk books I have read, why or why they do not work, and why they are so disliked by the majority of people. Of course, as a disclaimer, I want to state that all of my opinions are purely just that, opinions. If you do not like Splatterpunk, that's totally okay, and it's your right to all those opinions. I would actually love to hear what you have to say if you don't agree with me, as it's hard to get criticism when you talk to only yourself about things. Let's get into it. Written by Judith Sonnet and released in 2022, this book is god-awful. To be perfectly fair, it is my own fault I read it. I was first introduced in a TikTok about Splatterpunk books that were hard to finish, so I only really have myself to blame. Book follows our main protagonist, Jody, and her two kids who are returning to college after their summer break. Jody stops at a gas station both to pick up gas and use the bathroom, where she flirts with the attendant and thinks the weirdest shit ever that had me gobsmacked the whole time. After what can only be described as her pissing flirt, she returns back to her car and notices her daughter acting strange, although she fails to notice the full-grown man in her back seat the whole time. It's genuinely shocking how she doesn't notice this man who's even described to be large. Like, dude, she was so horny she didn't notice the man with a gun right next to her son and daughter? Literally, I cannot even wash my hands without checking if someone's lurking behind my shower curtain. Regardless, the man tells her to keep driving and starts asking her kids some weird questions before they come across an old couple on the side of the road with car trouble. They get the old lady in the car by the man's instructions, where he shoots her partner and tells Jody to book it. We then get a very gross scene where he makes the old lady touch Jody's son, which is very hard to read and made me stop reading to go do some laundry to cool off. Upon returning from my chore, we get a fucking warning mid-book telling us it's just a story, it's not real. And then we get to the peak, where the man tells Jody to stop the car and for everyone to get out. I don't feel particularly comfy telling what happens next, but basically he tells Jody's kids to fandangle, where he kills her daughter but still makes them raspberries and milk bottles. The old woman tries to run away and he kills her, which is shocking relief from the dry heaving I was doing. Fast forward and Jody kills him and says no one rides for free, and returns to the gas station with her mentally destroyed son. So what is so wrong with this book? This may be a silly question. You may think, Connor, what the fuck? The whole book is wrong. And yet, you're right. But why, in contrast of it being a Splatterpunk book, is this shit? Well, first off, there's a gross over-sexualization of the story. Jody's first words to us is basically, I love my kids, and dick, which carries weight throughout the story, setting a very sexual tone at the start, which creates a fetishistic lens during all the gross areas of the story. The presence of Jody's intense sexuality during the start makes the book almost feel like smut, which although Splatterpunk books explore taboos, they rarely reward depraved activity. Showing intense depictions of SA is not inherently wrong, and has been done very well in the past. However, how it is shown in this book is way too lustful in a way to describe it. The tone of the story being highly sexual instantaneously sets the rest of the tone for the story, which in a way sexualizes the depictions of sexual assault. Secondly, Jody is a boring character, and so is the man in the car. The man is so one-dimensional, and that could actually be interesting, as it would infer we are purely seeing his actions through Jody's context. purely evil and sadistic. However, this fails because Jodie just isn't interesting enough for us to empathize with. We empathize with her over the fact she's a mother and we experience her pain throughout the story, but it's not because of her personality. Her personality adds no weight, no substance. Jodie's kids also fall into the category of perfect victims, which are used to try and elicit empathy. However, it just isn't necessary and is just used to infantilize them and spur Jodie's thoughts and agency rather than have any of their own. I don't want any hate towards the creator of these books. She seems lovely, but fuck dude, this book is just so beyond slop, and I honestly regret the time I wasted reading it. This book fails to fulfill the splatterpunk genre for me, and it feels way more like a voyeuristic and fetishistic fan fiction rather than a genuine story. I wanted to only do unique authors for every section, and that hurts when talking about Aaron Beauregard. Slob is one of my favorite books and actually talks about the depersonalization that SA can have, as well as the feeling of your body and trauma. The son of the Slob, The Streets, is also so good as it deals with her experience after her trauma, regressing back to trauma, as well as the dealing of a child deprived from grape. Unfortunately, Playground fails to hold a candle to the Slob. Playground was released in 2022 and absolutely blew up on TikTok, with people commenting on the grossness of a specific part of the book. Although I don't think this is a perfect book, I actually don't think it's bad either, just a little overrated. Playground follows a group of children, their parents, and Rock. Rock is the adopted son of the billionaire Geraldine, who upon finding out she is infertile, devises soul-like traps with her Nazi friend for a reason I can't remember and gets Rock to secure children for it. We follow a group of 8 children trying to survive these traps after being manipulated to be there, with their parents watching helplessly. Rock forms a strange relationship with one of them, Danny, who deals with abuse from his mother, who literally cut out his tongue. Rock empathizes with Danny over this, as he deals with pretty much all the types of abuse from Geraldine. The book ends with Rock saving Danny and the other last remaining child and killing Geraldine. Rock is fatally wounded and is assumed dead in the end of the book. This seems vastly tamer than the other book, but that's because the grossest parts are skippable in the description, which I actually prefer. Awful things happen to the people in this book, yet they still have discernible personalities, morality, and agency. The only person defined by their circumstance is Rock, and it's his arc throughout the book to become more than his circumstance. However, this book suffers by the children. In the book, the oldest child is around 14 at the oldest, yet some of the children talk strangely mature for their age, yet are also shockingly dumb, with one girl taking like 10 minutes to solve a puzzle I figured out at first glance. She's not dumb either, so it just seems so inconsistent. The book also loses me with how unrealistic some of the traps are, and it can be hard to visualize the situation the children are in, which really sucks, since when things are better explained and more sensible, it really shows the horror. It's not a bad book. I really like it, but it's just so average compared to what Aaron Beauregard can do, and it hurts that this is the book to get renowned when he has such better works. This book is entry-level splatterpunk, and it just suffers from it, unfortunately. I've read through it a couple times, and I just have no inclination to do so again. I actually saw this on the same video as No One Rides for Free, and it's actually quite good. It is definitely a taste and can be hard to follow due to its surrealistic tone and plot. Written by Matthew Stoke in 1998, Chaos is a fucking drug trip and a half. It follows our main character Steven as he tries to gain independence from his abusive mother. Steven lives in a dirty flat with his dog whose legs had been shattered by Steven's mother as he was a puppy. Which I said I shouldn't have said like so happily. I'm just reading off a script, I'm not gonna lie. Steven craves to get the life he sees in sitcoms, to be rid of his mother and live a normal life, and he has procured a job at the local slaughterhouse to try and get his independence. He also tries to pursue his upstairs neighbor, Lucy, to try and get his sitcom life as he craves. However, the slaughterhouse is neither what Steven or I expected, as a man talks about making out with cows and his boss is fucking weird, man. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, I actually don't know how to summarize this, because next thing you know, Steven's feeding his mother his own excrement, and Lucy's giving herself a colonoscopy. Jesus Christ. Also, Steven's boss is even weirder now and doing cows and getting Steven addicted to killing. And then, Jesus Christ, sewer cows try and get Steven to kill his boss. And Steven does. He kills both his boss and his mother. And then Lucy moves into his apartment and she's pregnant. And Steven is so close to getting the sitcom life that he's desperately craved throughout the story. But it's not the same anymore. And his urge to kill is swelling inside of him, ready to burst. So he returns to the sewer as Cow Jesus and gets a cow wife and leads them to cow revolution. This is a weird story. Lucy then dies in a pretty brutal manner, taking out the baby from her stomach, and so Steven abandons his life on the surface, kills his cow competition, and becomes cow god with his cow wife. None of that made any fucking sense, and I cut out a lot of fat to try and make that work. Shockingly, however, this book is actually pretty good and works surprisingly well. All the surreal and absurd shit fits in claustrophobically comfortably, and none of it feels out of place, weirdly enough. Lucy is actually a shockingly well-written character, and the story is just so tragic. The book feels depressingly comforting, like a suffocating blanket that warms your soul. It's a complex book that I could dissect for years, but it does suffer slightly from the fact it is so hard to read again. The book is such an experience that reading it again is just so hard, which honestly, I don't know if it's actually a bad thing. I feel like if I tried to explain the surrealism in this book, analyze every page, it might lose how special it is. The fact it's so emotional rather than logical is something I can really find, and it's just so beautiful. The book doesn't feel like a novel, but a picture you've explained to yourself over the course of hours, and I think that suits it. I don't actually know if I would recommend this book or not. Like, it is an experience, and it's really fucking beautiful, man. But like, it's a lot and it takes a while to read, and I don't know if most people have the time or the emotional vulnerability to experience this book to its fullest. I probably haven't experienced this book to its fullest, but regardless, it's a book that stands out, and if you are interested, I highly recommend reading it. It is a very This is one of my favorite Splatterpunk books, or books in general. It was the first Splatterpunk book I've ever read, and honestly, I think it's the first time I've felt so understood. I've always enjoyed more taboo subjects, and the ideas of depersonalization, self-mutilation, obsession, sexuality, and theology really scratched my brain in a way I've never had with a book before. I felt like my thoughts were finally heard. It felt like connection. Published in 2021 by Eric LaRocca, things have gotten worse since we last spoke. Follows the chat logs between two women, Agnes and Zoe. Agnes wishes to sell an apple peeler heirloom in order to pay rent, and Zoe wishes to purchase it, with him eventually finding connection and forming a relationship. Zoe gives Agnes money without buying the heirloom, and gets Agnes fired from work for sexual misconduct, and then the relationship furthers with Zoe asking Agnes to kill the lizard after naming it and carrying it around all day. This sends Agnes over the deep end, and she breaks up their relationship, only to return to Zoe a couple months later. Agnes desperately wants a baby, and for that Zoe urges her to eat spoiled meat in an attempt to get a tapeworm, which will act as their pseudo-child. Agnes does this, however refuses to expel it when Zoe urges her to do so, forming a connection to the life living inside of her. Zoe is understandably disturbed by this, and leaves. The book ends with Agnes on the floor, holding the tapeworm and apple peeler and messaging Zoe, begging for her to return to her and their son. Researching for this video, I found that the reviews and reception for the story is actually less than stellar, with people saying it fetishizes lesbian relationships and is more like a creepypasta than a genuine story. I don't think that's accurate to the story, however. I am not a lesbian, and I can see how the sexual aspects of the book could come across as fetishy, but the nature of their relationship is purely obsessive and toxic, and the fact their lesbian relationship set in the early 2000s works to further isolate Agnes and push her to her limits in search for romantic connection, regardless of the relationship itself. Formatting of the story as web chats honestly is really creative and sets the story up super well, and calling it a creepypasta both discredits the love put in the story as well as the validity of creepypastas as a genre. This book is just so beautifully written, and although I am probably biased against critique, this book is just perfect in my eyes. Although once again, I'm not a lesbian, so I have less voice on this. To summarize this video, I think it's very important to understand the context and demographic of a novel and its genre before making a sweeping overgeneralization. The books, although display downright disgusting actions, never actively encourage them, and when they do fetishize the content, it dramatically lowers the book's quality, as seen in some examples here. Punk allows more depictions of situations and relationships to be explored, and although I think it's perfectly alright to shit on a book which encourages depraved behavior, writing off the genre as a whole for its taboo subject matter and grotesque depictions isn't right. And I get not liking very popular or even niche genres. I have major distaste for movies or series which depict real-life stories of murder and assault, as well as disapprove of many true crime shows. Yes, I understand how they do not actively encourage the behavior shown in these films and series, but they sensationalize these real-life stories and exploit real victims for their own financial gain. It's gross to me, yet I refuse to generalize its viewer base as depraved for viewing it. Yes, I do wish they engage in more ethical ways of getting their true crime fix, but I also understand how true crime can be therapeutic, especially to women and people who have been in awful situations. I only wish people would treat those who enjoy Splatterpunk the exact same. Thank you so much for watching to the end. It means a lot that you listened to my yapping for Lord knows how long, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to try and make a video on Megan is Missing next, and my thoughts on how the situations are depicted in the movie, but that's for next time. I hope you have a wonderful day, and if you like the video, please subscribe to see more of my content. Bye!